All right, let's dive into one of history's greatest puzzles. We're talking about a massive Bronze Age civilization that, it really had it all. We're talking huge cities, global trade networks, just incredible engineering. Everything that is, except for the one thing we always thought an ancient empire absolutely needed, a king.
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? How do you run a civilization bigger than ancient Egypt for 1,000 years without a king? I mean, just think about that for a second. This was a sprawling society, and in a lot of ways, it was even more advanced than places like Egypt or Mesopotamia. It was thriving for centuries, but when archaeologists go looking for a pharaoh or some great king, a glorious emperor, they come up with absolutely nothing. So really, how on earth did they pull that off?
Okay, so let's get right into the heart of this enigma. We're talking about the Indus Valley Civilization. You might also hear it called the Harappan Civilization. And look, make no mistake, this was not some small, isolated culture tucked away somewhere. This was a genuine superpower of the ancient world. But it was one that, well, it seemed to be playing by a completely different rulebook.
First, let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this place. At its peak, right around 2500 BCE, the Indus civilization covered almost 1 million square kilometers. Now, to put that into perspective for you, that's a bigger chunk of land than ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia put together. We are talking about an absolutely massive domain.
And this is where things get really weird. When you start comparing the Indus Valley to the other big players of the Bronze Age, this strange pattern just jumps out at you. Okay, advanced cities. Yep, they had them. Long-distance trade? For sure, check. But then you get to all the classic signs of a monarchy. Monumental palaces? Nope. Giant royal tombs stuffed with treasure? Can't find them. What about those grand statues of powerful kings? Not a single one has ever been dug up. It's almost like they built this massive empire and then just forgot to appoint a ruler.
So, okay, if they weren't pouring all their time and money into building giant monuments for kings, what were they building instead? Well, their cities tell a story of incredible sophistication. The evidence points to a society that was kind of obsessed with order, with top-notch engineering, and with public life. And honestly, that just makes the mystery of who was calling the shots even deeper.
I mean, their genius for organization was just staggering. You can look at dozens of their major cities, places like Harappa and Mohenjo-Daro, which are separated by hundreds of kilometers, and you find the exact same master plan. We're talking streets laid out in a near-perfect grid, buildings all made from the same standardized, mass-produced bricks. They had public granaries, walled citadels. They even had latrines in individual houses that connected to a city-wide system. This kind of uniformity over such a huge area, it just screams an incredible level of coordination and some really strong shared beliefs.
But this might just be their most stunning achievement of all. We're talking about the world's first known, city-wide covered sanitation and drainage systems. Seriously. While other great civilizations were busy building pyramids up to the gods, the people of the Indus Valley were engineering public health infrastructure that the world wouldn't see again on this kind of scale for literally thousands of years. It tells you everything you need to know about their priorities, right? They were civic-minded, focused on the well-being of the whole community.
And you just can't talk about their cities without mentioning the iconic Great Bath of Mohenjo-Daro. I mean, look at this thing. It's this massive, beautifully constructed public pool, and they even lined it with natural tar to make it perfectly watertight. But this was so much more than just an engineering flex. It's a huge clue that suggests collective rituals, maybe something to do with purity in water, or right at the heart of their society. And the key word here is public. This was a space for everyone, a communal hub, not some private swimming pool for a king.
Okay, so if their power wasn't coming from a king with a big scary army, then where did it come from? Well, all the evidence points to their incredible economic engine. It seems like the secret to their unity, their social glue, wasn't military power, but a ridiculously well-organized system of craft production and trade. You can pretty much break their whole economic model down into 3 really elegant steps. First, and this is the absolute key to the whole thing, they created a single, unified system of weights and measures across that entire 1 million square kilometer territory. Think of the coordination that takes. Second, they used that standardization to basically supercharge the mass production of high-quality crafts. And third, they exported all these amazing goods to the major global hubs of the time. It was just a perfectly well-oiled machine for generating wealth and influence.
And we're not talking about small-time local trading here. These guys were major players on the world stage. They were exporting stuff that everybody else wanted, these beautiful, intricately drilled carnelian beads, fine cotton textiles, which was a huge innovation back then, ivory, copper, you name it.
And in return, they'd import the raw materials they didn't have at home, like tin to make bronze, or that gorgeous precious blue stone, lapis lazuli, all the way from Afghanistan. Their trade network was massive, stretching all the way to Mesopotamia and down into the Persian Gulf.
And how do we know all this for sure? Well, it's not just a theory. We have the receipts. Archaeologists have literally found Indus-made products, things like their unique soapstone seals and those signature carnelian beads, buried in the royal tombs of Mesopotamian cities like Ur. That tells you their stuff wasn't just common trade goods, it was considered luxury, prized by the kings and queens of other great civilizations.
But for all the amazing things we can piece together from their cities and their trade goods, there is one giant, gaping hole in the middle of this story. One huge piece of the puzzle is completely missing, and that is the great unsolved mystery of the Indus Valley: their writing. Because, just imagine if we could read what they wrote. It could answer everything. Are we looking at records of their laws, maybe epic poems, the names of their leaders, or maybe a council of elders? What incredible secrets about how this unique society actually worked are locked away in these tiny, beautiful symbols?
And trust me, it is a true puzzle. We've identified over 400 unique symbols, but here's the catch. They almost always show up in these really short little bursts on small stone seals. A lot of the time, they're right next to this fascinating unicorn figure. But the single biggest hurdle, the reason we're still stuck, no one has ever found a bilingual text. We don't have an Indus Rosetta Stone to help us crack the code. So yeah, it remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries.
So, without being able to read their writing, we're forced to try and figure out their beliefs from the objects they left behind. And guess what? We find the exact same paradox here that we saw in their politics. We find all these little terracotta mother goddesses figurines and really interesting seals showing figures in what look like yoga poses, maybe an early version of the god Shiva. But the things we expect to see? They're just not there. No giant temple complexes, no signs of a powerful centralized priesthood, no tombs filled with lavish religious offerings. It really seems like their religion, just like their government, was more of a personal, community-based thing, not something dictated from the top down.
So what happened to this incredible, one-of-a-kind civilization? All great powers eventually fade or change, but the story of the Indus Valley isn't one of those dramatic, fiery collapses you see in movies. It's something much quieter, a more subtle story of fading away, but also of enduring.
Right now, most of the leading theories point to big environmental changes. The rivers that were the lifeblood of their cities might have literally shifted course or dried up. The monsoons they relied on for agriculture could have weakened over time. And this part is really crucial. There is zero archaeological evidence of a big invasion or a massive war that wiped them out. It seems people just gradually moved away from the big cities and back into smaller villages. It was a transformation, a deurbanization, not a violent end.
So the big, unified, city-based civilization, it did disappear. But its ideas, they left behind an incredibly powerful legacy. Things like their innovations in crafts, their system of standardized weights, their brilliant water management, all of that was absorbed by the cultures that came later and ended up influencing how South Asia developed for centuries to come.
Which really just leaves us with one last big thought to chew on. For almost 1,000 years, the people of the Indus Valley built this vast, prosperous world, and they built it on a foundation of shared standards, trade, and incredible public works, not on the commands of a king. So the question for us living in our own complex, interconnected world is pretty clear. What can a society built on coordination instead of command teach us today?